What does it mean to be great?
Career. Status as a black Muslim minister.
To transcend, to have your name inspire and uplift. Muhammad Ali has been called the greatest of all time. And as someone who finds it difficult to watch, let alone enjoy a boxing match, it wasn't a statement that particularly moved me. But some people transcend their craft. They become more than what they do. And rather than shrink to fit inside the world, they force the world to grow in order to fit them inside. From the moment you hear him speak,
we're gonna get it on because we don't get along.
It's impossible to be anything other than captivated. And the more you learn about the man, the more even a boxing layperson begins to realize that Muhammad Ali was indeed the greatest of all time.
Everybody stop talking now. Attention. I told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time. When I beat Sunday Liston, I told you today I'm still the greatest of all time. Never again defeat me. Never again say that I'm going to be defeated. Never again make me the underdog until I'm about 50 years old. Then you might get me.
Now, this video is not about whether Muhammad Ali was a good or a bad person. It's about why he was a great one. There have been many outstanding boxers, some stronger, more powerful, and more successful than Ali. But when we talk about embodying this greatness, we're talking about more than the technical aspects of boxing, as important as they are. It's not just about what the fighter can achieve in the ring. It's about how they elevate their status as a boxer to become something almost mythical. As George Foreman himself once put it,
to say he was the greatest boxer is a put down. He was bigger than boxing. He was bigger than anything.
Now, to get a sense of who Ali was, we need to set the scene of what the world was like at the time. Until Ali, all black athletes were expected to be deferential, polite, and maintained a clean, sharp public image, by necessity. Getting on was difficult enough, and being as inoffensive as possible to white society was essential to having any kind of livelihood. After all, Jack Johnson's victory over Tommy Burns and his subsequent demolition of the so-called Great White Hope, Jim J. Jeffries, was still just about in living memory. Johnson's victories triggered an extraordinary racist backlash from boxing fans and promoters who simply couldn't stomach the idea of a black man being heavyweight champion, and this led to riots and even murders. You see, Johnson didn't conform to the racial norms of the day. He lived a flamboyant lifestyle, even daring to date white women. He was harassed, threatened, and most unacceptable of all, he kept on winning. Eventually, he was targeted with a political prosecution under the Mann Act and went into exile, before eventually coming back to serve a prison sentence. So when subsequent great black champions like Joe Louis came along, they were accepted by white society because they conformed to the expectations of white America. Because he was inoffensive, he didn't comment on race and politics, he never taunted his opponents, and he was a proud, patriotic citizen of the United States. And as far as white society was concerned, he knew his place. However, when a young fighter named Cassius Clay came along, he did the opposite of what was expected. And rather than be humble and show deference to his opponents and, keep his head down, he would taunt them, he mocked them, called them bums, and then predicted the exact round he would knock them out in.
Cassius, can I ask you how you're feeling now at this point of your training?
I'm feeling great. I'm ready to go to war right now.
Well, when you say you're ready to go to war right now...
If I see that bear on the street, I'll beat him before the fight.
You'd actually take him on before the fight?
Beat him like I'm his daddy.
I saw Sonny Liston a few days ago, Cassius.
Ain't he ugly? He's too ugly to be the world's champ. The world's champ should be pretty like me.
Well, he told me to bet my life that you wouldn't go 3 rounds.
Well, if you want to lose your money, then bet on Sunday.
By refusing to play by these unwritten rules and to know his place,
I am the king of the world! Hold it.
Ali wasn't just making enemies, he was making his own path harder. Every victory would have to be emphatic, undeniable for his success to be accepted. Unfortunately for him, and the legions of people he would go on to inspire, he was just such a fighter. From the early days, it was clear to many that Cassius Clay was a strange and unusual talent. One of the greatest anecdotes I have ever read in my life comes from Tom Hauser's oral biography of Ali, when he was a young, cocky fighter in his late teens making waves. Some promoters had brought former heavyweight champion Enagmar Johansson to Miami to sell tickets for his upcoming title fight. His trainer, Whitey Bimstein, had needed someone to spar with Johansson, so he asked Angelo Dundee, Ali's trainer, if he had anyone. Dundee barely hesitated. He turned and yelled, "Hey Cash!" And across the gym, this stunningly athletic young man, just 18 or 19, literally danced his way over. Now Johansson was a dangerous fighter. He had a devastating right hand, the punch that had made him world champion. But Clay wasn't intimidated in the slightest. When Dundee asked if he wanted to go and spar with Johansson, Clay replied, "Johansson? I'll go dancing with Johansson. I'll go dancing with Johansson." Bimstein looked at Dundee. "What the hell is this?" And Dundee just smirked. "You ain't seen nothing yet with this crazy bastard." They got in the ring, and from the moment the bell rang, Johansson didn't stand a chance. Clay was just too fast, too slick. He danced, popped him with jabs, slipped every shot. It was effortless. But he wasn't just beating Johansson, he was humiliating him. The whole time, Clay wouldn't shut up. He kept taunting and trash-talking Johansson, and he was getting furious. A former champion, a grown man, chasing around this cocky teenager, throwing wild right hands, missing by 20 feet, looking absolutely ridiculous. And by the end of the second round, he was so exhausted, so frustrated, that Whitey Bimstein just called it off. And right there, everyone watching knew Clay had it. This wasn't just a kid with talent, this was something very special. It was clear that while Ali had a big mouth, he had the tools to back up everything he was saying in the ring, and as time would show, everything he would say out of it. It wasn't just bluster and arrogance, however. After hearing the wrestler Gorgeous George cut a promo on the radio, Ali was consciously playing the part of a heel. The more trash he talked, the more he pissed people off, the more excited they'd be to come and watch him get beaten up.
Well, 100% will be coming to see me, but 99% will be coming to see me get beat.
You really feel that?
Because they think I talk too much. But I got these.
And they represent your thinking.
These represent dynamite. There he is.
Now, talking trash and turning heel is a story as old as time in boxing. He wasn't the first and certainly would not be the last to do so. But Ali was the one that turned it into an art form and built up every fight with the words of a poet.
Let everybody know that that thing you got on your head is a phony and it comes from a tail of a pony.
He was quicker, wittier, funnier, better looking, and at the time, a better boxer than all of his opponents. And with every victory and every cocksure poem that bounced out of his mouth, the desire to see him fall only grew. And as the world entered the year of 1964, it wasn't long until he was set to get put in his place. Sonny Liston was called one of the most brutal and dominating heavyweight champions of all time. With well-known ties to the mob, he seemed indestructible, and much of the boxing world lined up to finally see Ali get his mouth shut in his first heavyweight title shot at 22 years old. Now, before the fight, Ali was acting like a madman, blowing up the press conference, turning up at a gun-wielding Liston's house in a bus with a megaphone. In short, he was acting completely crazy.
I predict that he will go in 8 to prove that I am great. And if he want to go to heaven, I'll get him in 7. He'll be in a worse fix if I cut it to 6. And if he keeps talking jive, I'll cut it to 5. And if he makes me sore, he'll go like Roger Moore. And if that don't do, I'll cut it to 2. And if he run, he'll go in 1. And if he don't want to fight, he should keep his ugly self home that night.
And in one of the most controversial results in boxing history, at 22 years old, Muhammad Ali would become heavyweight champion of the world.
And Cassius Clay has won after 6 rounds, and there's the champion, the ex-champion, sitting despondently in his corner. A sensation to end all sensations. It's all over at the end of the 6th round, and Cassius Clay... Come here, Chad. I'm the greatest thing that ever lived. Now, wait a minute. Now hold it, move over, Joe.
And this clip sums up the juxtaposition that was playing out in real time. The white reporter forcefully putting his arm around Ali, constantly trying to gain control of the interaction, telling him to hold up. But the new champ was going to say and do as he pleased.
God's with me, can't nobody be against me.
Sonny,
I shook up the world. I know God. I know the real God.
Cassius, wait a minute, Cassius.
1964 was also the year that Cassius Clay, now briefly known as Cassius X, completely shed what he called his slave name and officially became Muhammad Ali. 2 years earlier, he had joined the Nation of Islam, a group that was not just a religious movement, but also a powerful force in the Black Power movement. And in '64, he wasn't just heavyweight champion of the world, he was one of the loudest, proudest, and most politically outspoken men to ever hold that title. At the time, the Nation of Islam was led by Elijah Muhammad, a figure who, like Ali, divided public opinion to say the least, and it was he who had bestowed Ali with his new name. Now, while civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. advocated for racial integration, the Nation of Islam explicitly opposed it. Their ideology, championed by figures like Malcolm X at the time at least, held that true equality could never exist within white society or the white power structure. So instead of seeking inclusion into a system they viewed as fundamentally oppressive, they aimed to build a separate and self-sufficient black nation, hence the name Nation of Islam. Now, to call this a cause célèbre is an understatement. The world heavyweight champion was now a proud, politically vocal Muslim, aligned with a religious movement whose teachings included the belief that white people were inherently oppressive, devils in their theology, and for the white establishment, this was utterly unacceptable. Now, the easiest way to solve this problem was for Ali to simply lose the title. However, there happened to be the slight problem of him being a better boxer than everyone else on the planet, and he kept getting better and better. Over the next few years, he got stronger, his arms and legs thickened, his dominance in the ring became total. He was refining himself into something unstoppable. And then, on April 28th, 1967, at his physical and professional peak as a boxer, everything changed. Since 1955, a proxy war between the United States and the Soviet Union had been going on in Vietnam. And come 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson made a decision that would overshadow all others of his administration, as he ordered a massive escalation of US military involvement and began what we colloquially refer to as the Vietnam War. Having been reclassified and now considered fit for active service, Ali publicly stated that he would refuse to be drafted into the United States military.
I'm not going to help nobody get something my Negroes don't have. If I'm going to die, I'll die now, right here fighting you. If I'm going to die, you my enemy. My enemy is the white people, not Viet Congs or Chinese or Japanese. You my opposer when I want freedom. You my opposer when I want justice. You my opposer when I want equality. You won't even stand up for me in America for my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight, but you won't even stand up for me here at home.
Now, regardless of how you feel about the war or how you feel about Ali's political beliefs, to have the most charismatic, handsome, famous person on earth saying things like this was a major problem for the establishment within the US.
I will not go 10,000 miles from here to help murder and kill another poor people simply to continue the domination of white slave masters over the darker people of the earth.
It was the cherry on top. Ali seemed to tick every conceivable box possible to make his very existence as unacceptable as possible to the American mainstream. And although the tide was just beginning to turn, the war did still maintain significant public support. And the reaction against him came from everywhere. They simply couldn't process this proud black man refusing to do as he was told. They were determined to do something about it and put him in his place. And come April 28th, 1967, they finally got what they needed. Ali formally refused to be inducted into the US military, and the reaction was swift. Later that day, the New York State Athletic Commission stripped him of his boxing license, and of course, for the next 3 years, no other association in the country would grant him a new one. and the World Boxing Association stripped him of his World Heavyweight Championship. The establishment had won. Now, having been humiliated, his title and even his livelihood stripped away from him, he would surely fade away into obscurity and the world would begin to move on from Muhammad Ali.
He is a convicted felon in the United States. He has broken its laws. He has been found guilty. Because of the great justice and system of jurisprudence we have, he is out on bail while superior courts ponder his fate. He will inevitably go to prison, as well he should. He is not funny. He's a disgrace to his country, his race, and what he laughingly describes as his profession.
But unfortunately for them, Muhammad Ali was a fighter. The US government, the media,
that you're talking about is for doing something illegal.
The cultural elite, the boxing establishment, and huge swaths of the public lined up, used their combined might to get Ali to behave as the system demanded. But he looked them all in the eye and said no. He could have relented. He could have enlisted, done nothing more than fight exhibition matches for the troops and avoided combat entirely. But for him, principle meant everything. And for the next 3 years, he fought. Not in the ring, but in courtrooms, in the media, in the court of public opinion. And while the very serious commentators of the day, the David Suskins, would soon be relegated to the garbage can of history, Muhammad Ali's star began to rise higher than ever, driven by his unwavering defiance. And after years of appeals, countless lawyers, relentless court battles, on June 28, 1971, in a unanimous decision, the United States Supreme Court finally overturned the conviction of Muhammad Ali. By this point, public opposition to the war had grown dramatically, and Ali's image as a political outcast had begun to shift. Until that point, aside from a few courageous figures such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ali had received next to zero explicit support from the political and civil rights leaders of the day. But as the storm around him began to calm, many became more willing to publicly embrace him. And with the help of State Senator Leroy R. Johnson, on August 11th, 1970, Ali was granted a license by the City of Atlanta Boxing Commission. Muhammad Ali was back. But having had boxing taken away from him during what should have been his physical peak, and after 3 long years out of the ring, would this still be the same Muhammad Ali? And as he stepped back between the ropes, the same old tunes begin to play. He wasn't the same Ali. He couldn't dance like before. He wasn't as fast. He was older. And as the 1970s got underway, serious questions were being asked about whether the sun had set on Muhammad Ali.
I'm gonna go play me some soul music, man. All right, come on.
Now, during his enforced absence, Joe Frazier had become heavyweight champion. Despite boycotting the initial title elimination triggered by Ali's exile, he later went on to defeat Jimmy Ellis to claim the title. Even so, lingering doubts about the legitimacy of his reign persisted, many fueled by Ali himself, who still referred to himself as the champion. Ali was eager, and as history would show, perhaps too eager, to reclaim his crown. And in what would become his first professional loss, he was decisively beaten by Joe Frazier, who retained his title and affirmed his legitimacy as a great heavyweight champion. But soon after, a new monster emerged. George Foreman was bulldozing his way through the heavyweight division. And in January 1973, in one of boxing's most shocking moments, he annihilated Joe Frazier in just 2 rounds.
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
To become world heavyweight champion. To call this domination was an understatement. He maintained this reign of terror, dispatching his challengers with terrifying ease. And 2 years later, in Caracas, Venezuela, Foreman dispatched the great Ken Norton, again in just 2 rounds. By now, George Foreman had not merely defeated the only two fighters who had ever beaten Muhammad Ali, he had demolished them, each within 2 brutal rounds. Foreman seemed unstoppable, and this was clearly set to be his era. But there was still one man who had a thing or two to say about that. As, despite all protestations to the contrary, the sun had not yet set on Muhammad Ali.
Only last week, I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean I make medicine sick.
$10 million. Zaire. George Foreman versus Muhammad Ali. The Rumble in the Jungle.
We gonna get it on because we don't get along.
You would continue boxing even if you would lose over there.
I beg your pardon?
Boxing ability, speed, whooping it on point for the distance if necessary. Gonna rumble in the jungle. He's meeting his master, his teacher, his idol.
The time may have come to say goodbye to Muhammad Ali, because very honestly, I don't think he can beat George Foreman. Maybe he can pull off a miracle. But against George Foreman, so young, so strong, so fearless, against George Foreman, who does away with his opponents one after another in less than 3 rounds, it's hard for me to conjure with that.
You, George Foreman, all of you chumps are gonna bow when I whoop him. All of you. I know you got him. I know you got him picked. But the man's in trouble. I'm gonna show you how great I am.
Barney's boxing skills of Muhammad Ali. It's age against youth.
Just before the fight, I'm looking at him and the man's giving his instructions. I said, "Sucker, you are in trouble tonight. You are fighting the greatest fight of all times. You heard I was the greatest, like you just said you heard this, now you see it." I said, "You said I was the greatest, but you're gonna see. I'm fast, sucker. I'm gonna burn you up. You were fighting your idol. When you were a little kid, you were hearing about me, you know."
Here we go, Ali quickly across, shifting left to right. George moves slow, Ali. Of George Foreman. Foreman down, moves Ali with a right hand lead again. As Foreman, I haven't seen too many times before. Moves Ali with a right hand lead again. As Foreman moves Ali with a right hand lead again. As Foreman moves Ali with a right hand lead again.
I said, "Come on, show me something. They told me you could hit hard. You're just a sissy. Come on, sucker. Show me something. Come on, you can do better than that, George. You want to corner me? Here I am. You're waiting to corner me?" And he just, and every once in a while I just go, "Look at you. Round 7. And you're tired. You have 8 more rounds to go. Come on, keep punching. I want you to get tired." I said, "Uh-oh." I said, "This is the wrong place to get tired." I laid back. I said, "Okay, take your best shot. Take your best shot." He's breathing. I said, "Oh, you finished, boy. You are in trouble." I said, "You don't have but 2 chances, slim and none. Sucker, you are in trouble tonight. You are fighting the greatest fight of all time. You said I was the greatest, but you're gonna see."
Ali had done the unthinkable, the impossible. At 32 years old, almost nobody thought he could have defeated the 25-year-old Foreman, not even his own team. But as always been the case, at every point that a lesser person might have crumbled, Ali prospered. At every hurdle thrown in his way, he never wavered. He refused to be anything less than great, anything less than himself. And rather than pretend to be someone else, Rather than shrink down to fit inside a small world, he forced that world to grow so that it would become big enough for him. And from here, he would begin another historic reign as world heavyweight champion. And of course, we all know what would happen to Ali and the extraordinary life he would go on to live until his passing. But for me, it was at this moment that his legend would be forever engraved in stone. Muhammad Ali, the greatest of all time.
The end of your life, whether it was Allah who was saying it, Elijah Muhammad, or whether it was something that someone wrote about you after you'd gone, what's the thing you would most like people to say about your life? He was a great champion, or what?
I'd like for them to say he took a few cups of love. He took 1 tablespoon of patience, 1 teaspoon of generosity, 1 pint of kindness. He took 1 quart of laughter, 1 pinch of concern, and then he mixed willingness with happiness. He added lots of faith, and he stirred it up well. Then he spread it over a span of a lifetime, and he served it to each and every